Okay, so now we have imported the photos into Lightroom. So let me show you a bit the interface so you understand how it works. That's the photos we imported. That's basically the previews. On the left side, you have several options like catalog. This is the catalog I've created, which is the name is here, Quickstart catalog. So you can see that there is 9 photos in that catalog, and the previous import is 9 photos. You also can see that's exactly where it is on my hard drive. You can see it's there. This is my hard drive. And then you've got collections and public services, which will go into a later video. Okay, and on the right, we are into the library module. The library module is where it's like a bit like the Finder or Window Explorer. This is where if we had like tons of photos, this is where we could go and explore our hard drive to find photos. And I'll show you that in a later video on a real catalog with over 30,000 photos, so you can see how this works. Right now, we're going to jump directly into the develop module because this is where we retouch the photos. This is where you do you spend most of the time on Lightroom. Because you see there is several basically steps. It's like a workflow. The first one is library. This is where you choose your photo. Then you develop them. Because, you know, Lightroom and RAW files is like the dark room in the old days. Basically, RAW files need to be developed. They are just the raw informations taken from the camera, no saturation, no white balance, no contrast, nothing has been done on them. It's just pure raw meat. So it's up to you in the develop module to develop them. They are not usable as such, but you will see it's very fun and very fast. And then you have other modules like map, book, slideshow, print and web, which we'll go over into different videos. So let's jump into develop module and let's get into retouching. So here you see is the photo. On my left side, you have what we call presets. Presets meaning is that, let's say you don't want to develop yourself your photo and you want to use a pre-used presets. Well, you've got a whole bunch of presets which ships with Lightrooms. For example, you know, you just click on here and you can see, let me see, for example, the black and white preset. If you look on this screen here, as my mouse rolls over them, you can see, for example, black B and W contrast high. I click on it and the photo gets developed into a high contrast black and white. Now that's not what I want to do, but that was just to show you that here is the presets. I'll show you a bit more on that later on. So let me undo that with Command Z or Control Z on Windows to get back to the original state. There we have, that's a very important one, the history. As we're going to go here on the right side and do some develop settings on it, we are never going to destroy or touch the original digital negative. All we are doing is adding algorithms or methods, if you want, on the top of the photos, but I can always go back to its original state. I'll show you that also a bit later. And so that's history, and I'll go into collections a bit later. Right now, let's go into the main part that we really like, which is the develop module, which is also like a sort of a checklist, a workflow from the top down. And let's explore all the main functions. So to start with, usually the first thing you do with a photo is decide is white balance. What is white balance? Well, basically white balance is the it's a color that your photo has. When you go with the slider to the right, your photo gets warmer, and when you go to the left, it gets colder. So you can either do it with a slider, or you can go here and shoot and choose like daylight, cloudy, shade. It's basically different settings. Let's go on as such for now, as shot, meaning that's the original one, white balance that was in the camera as I took the photo. Now tint is basically is a different version of white balance. When you go to the right, the photo goes into sort of a purple magenta, and when you go to the left, it goes into like a greenish turquoise type of color. So let's go back to as shot. So for now, I'm not going to change the white balance. The reason why I don't want to change the white balance on this photo is because you can see this photo is underexposed. Now, why is it underexposed? It's underexposed because I had a nice sunset that night, and I wanted to get it right. And the way to get a right sunset, if you don't do HDR, which is taking several exposure, is to basically underexpose. It's called exposing for the highlights. You make sure that your highlights is not burned, meaning that all the information is there. So then you have a lot of darkness, but that's the beauty of Lightroom 4, is that it's going to be able to recover all these details in the darkness, and I'll show you how. So, okay. So now let me explain you the philosophy of these settings: exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. Basically, the way this works, these are sliders. When you go to the left, you see it's dark here on the left and it's light here on the right. So exposure, if I go on the left, the photo is going to get darker. If I go on the right, the photo is going to get brighter. If you double click on the slider, you go back to 0. So that's the nice thing, but the real power of Lightroom 4 is mainly these two settings, which are amazingly crazy good: highlights and shadows. What highlights does is basically only takes care of the highlights. So that you understand a bit more, let me explain you the histogram. Let's not go into very technical details about the histogram, but basically the way the histogram works is that it's a graph that on the left is all the informations which are very like dark pixel, like very dark black pixels, and on the right is anything which is light. So basically what it does is that if you see a lot of stuff here, it means that you have a lot dark pixels, and you see on this photo I don't have much light pixels, but I have a lot of dark pixels. So if, for example, look on the histogram, if I brighten up the photo, all the information goes on the right side of the histogram. If I go on the other way, all the information goes on the left. So the idea of a sort of ideal histogram is to have nothing basically on the sides. All the information should be in the middle of the histogram. If you have too much on the right, meaning your photo is going to be too bright or too much burn, meaning that some pixels are like going to be 100% black, and if you've got too much on the left, it means that it's going to be too dark. So now the good thing is that each slider handles a very specific part of the histogram, and actually you can see it here. Look what it says here under the mouse. Here it says black, here it says shadows, here it says exposure, here it says highlights, and here it says whites. So which is exactly the names we have here. So for example, if I go to the right on the shadows, see what happens. It's going to make the shadows bright, and it only changes this part on the histogram. It doesn't change anything else. It doesn't brighten up the whole photo. All it does, let me show you again before and after. That's the before and that's the after. All it does is open up the shadows. Okay? Now, highlights, as you can see, there's not much information, so I don't think it's going to do that much if I go to the left. Yeah, it doesn't do so much. I'm not going to do highlights so much because if you look at my histogram, I have almost no information there. So the key point here was the shadows. So now we've recovered a lot of information there. Next is whites. Now the way whites works is there is a method on how to use white. The idea is to get a good contrast of your photo. And the way it works is that you press the Alt key on your keyboard and you click on the white. Your whole screen will turn black, except for a few pixels, which will be like red dots or yellow dots or white dots. These dots, if they appear, it means they're like 100%, basically 100% white. Usually what I do is I go to the right until I get a bit of this 100% white pixel, which is mainly the sun. I don't care that the sun is 100% white. Maybe let's get the highlights a bit lower and let's continue. Let's click back on Alt and move the whites. Okay, now the sun is completely burned out, but that's okay. I don't care to have some details in the sun. So yeah, you basically hold on the Alt key until you see a bit of pixel, and then you can usually go back a little bit. Now on the blacks, it's the opposite. You press Alt, you click on the black, and you see it's all white, and the black dots that you see are dots which are going to be 100% black. Usually what I do is that I move my slider until I see a bit of black once, a bit more than that, and then I let go and I look if my overall photo is too dark or too light. Now I think this is fine. I'm not going to touch white and blacks. We've done white and black, but we need to do more to get it even more, you know, pop. I think the overall photo is still a bit too dark. So this is when I go for the exposure. This is where I'm gonna basically change the exposure. I always do the exposure after I've done the highlights, the shadows, the whites and the blacks. And you will see me do this over and over on photos. So if you're not familiar with it, you know, after a few examples, it will be very clear for you. Okay, so now that we have a proper exposure, this is where I usually go for the white balance. So let's see what happens if we go a bit to the right. Not so bad, makes the whole thing a bit yellow, but let's go to the left, see what happens. Making this blue a bit better. That's kind of nice. It's nice, but I would like this part to be a bit more red. So let's add maybe a little bit of magenta so that the blues are a bit like reddish. Okay, so that's not bad, but the photo is lacking of contrast. So, and this is, I usually do that totally at the end. Let's move a bit the contrast on the right. And usually when I move the contrast, I open up the shadows. They're already open to 100%. I move the exposure a little bit because sometimes it darkens too much the photo. So now the photo starts to look good, but for me the sky is too much blown out. So let's put the highlights back to the maximum, which is cool, but I would like to darken the sky even more. So there is a special tool for that which I use all the time on all the photos almost. It's the graduated filter. The way the graduated filter works, you click here, it's a special tool where you basically have the same settings that you have for the journal settings, but they are going to be active only on the gradients. So they are not completely at 0 because you see exposure is at 0,42. So let me double click on that. Or actually, let's click on Alt. When you click on Alt, the word effect becomes reset and you click on reset. Now everything is back down to 0. So now what I want to do is lower the exposure of the sky and only the sky. So let me lower the exposure first a little bit. And then I click on the sky and I hold on to my mouse and it's going to create a graduated filter. Okay, not so bad. And let's lower even more the exposure. Maybe not that much, but something like this. Okay, now check it out. Before, after. All we have done is darken, but on the gradient, the sky. Let's maybe add a bit of contrast in the sky so we see even the clouds better. Let's add some clarity. Clarity I have not showed you yet on a journal basis, but clarity basically makes things a bit more sharp. And it's very complete new way in Lightroom 4 how to deal with clarity. Next, now that's a complete new feature in Lightroom. You can change the temperature if you want, just for the graduated filter. Now I'm not going to do that because I want to keep this sky a bit blue, or maybe just add a touch of yellow in the sky to take, because a bit too much blue, but not so much. And so you see I added a bit of white balance, but on the gradient. And the way the gradient works is that anything I do here is going to be applied at 100% from here to the first line, and from this line to this line it's going to happen on a gradient. Now if you want to see how it is before the gradient filter, you can click on this before and after, so you can see the difference. Okay, let's maybe add some saturation on the gradient to make the colors pop a bit more. Not so much, because I'm going to add a bit more saturation. Now I find that the sky is a bit too dark, so as anything in Lightroom, all we are doing is non-destructive, so I can just back down a little bit the exposure. I just wanted to get a bit more, information on the sky. But see, before, after, a big change. Now let me show you another tool which works on the exact same principle, that except it's not on a gradient, it's with a brush. It's this tool just right next to the gradient filter. It's called a brush. Same thing, you've got settings there, which you can click on Alt and reset. And I want to put a bit more reddish sun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower a bit the exposure, just a tiny bit, and I'm gonna add some yellow, and I'm gonna add some red, and I'm gonna, so this is my brush. Now if you've got a mouse, you can move up and down the wheel on your mouse, and it's gonna make your brush size bigger or smaller. Or you can do it here on the size slider. Feather and flow, basically that's how much of whatever you have chosen here is going to be put into, I always put to 100%. Auto mask, I'll show you a bit later. I'm not going to use it for now because I just want to paint here a bit of more sun. So now what I've told Lightroom is that I'm going to paint some warmer temperature, warmer tint, and a bit of lower exposure. So let's give it a try. Let's paint around the sun to make, let's paint maybe with a bigger brush. I just want to paint the lower part of the photo to add a bit of reddish, a red feeling in it, you know. Not so bad. Check it out, before the brush stroke, after the brush stroke. See how this whole part is red? I can even make it redder with adding some saturation, and it only adds the saturation where I've brushed. I kind of like that. I could even make it more intense by lowering the exposure even more. But that's too much, then you can tell that, you know, I brush. So as anything, I mean, I like very saturated colors and heavy effect, but let's be a bit more subtle, you know. Okay, maybe I went a bit too much on the temperature, so let's back down a little bit here and here. Okay, and let's maybe back down a bit the saturation. Oh no, let's put it back there. Now let's say that I paint here and I say, oh boy, I painted too much. I wanted to stop here. Well, you can just press the Alt key, and your brush becomes a minus, and it becomes an eraser, and you can basically erase what the brush stroke you have just done. So that I just wanted to get a bit, you know, of reddish feeling on the bottom of the photo here. Now let's maybe add, let's get some more yellows here actually. No, not that much, but yeah, something like that. And yeah, I wanted, you know, to really see the sun. So this brush and this filter is called local adjustment. We're not dealing with the entire photo. We're just improving a little part of the photo, and this came out I think in Lightroom 2, and it is an amazing feature, really a life changer for me. Okay, so let's close this. So now if you want to see the original photo, the before and after, basically here on the history, this is all we have done so far on the photo. If I go back to the original state, which is called import, you will see that's how it was originally, and I can just go back. This is all the steps we have done, and I can go back to the last one, and this is where we are. That's one way to do it. Or you can also use the backslash key, but I have a French keyboard so I cannot show you. But so you can either do the backslash key, or you can also do the Y key. If you press the Y key, you have a clear preview of the before. It says before and after. What a change. Look at this. This is before, this is after. Huge difference. So let me press Y again, and we are back to normal. Okay, so basically I'm just about done. The only thing I want to talk to you is these three sliders which we have not gone over yet. Clarity. Clarity, if you go on the right, it's going to give a sort of HDR look to the photo, which can be cool. But for this one, so on the right, it's going to give you a very HDR look. On the left, it's going to give you a very soft look. Usually clarity, I like to add a little bit, like maybe 20%, to make it just pop a little more. Vibrance, let's first talk about saturation. Saturation, if you go on the right, is going to make all the colors more vivid. That could be nice, but I think it's overdone. And on the other side, if you go, it's going to make your photos black and white or less saturated. Let's go back in the middle. Now, vibrance is the same thing as saturation, except with a brain. It's saturation with a brain. What it does is that it's going to saturate your colors, but selectively. It's going to look for what colors are missing saturation, and going to put them in priority. So let's go here a little bit. Let's add some kind of overall saturation. Okay, and here is the name of the file. I'm pressing I. If you press I, the name of the file with the date it was shot and the size of the photo appear. If you press I again, you get the information. This was shot at 1/200th of a second because I actually hand hold it at f5.0 at ISO 100 with a 1740 lens at 22 millimeter. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I still think that the photo is a bit too dark, so now I can still boost up a bit the exposure, just very much, very slightly. Okay, so now that's really like the main things we're going to be using. Let's look a bit more what options we have. We have the tone curve. Basically, tone curve is basically the same thing than here, but you do it on a curve basis instead of these sliders. I encourage you to first use these settings. I actually find them more powerful than the curve, so I'm not going to go into the curve. Now we get to an interesting part. It's called the HSL window. H stands for hue, S for saturation, and L for luminance. Basically, the way it works is that let's first talk about hue. What hue does, it actually shifts the colors. It changes the colors. For example, the red, so you've got different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, blue, purple, magenta, which is every time it's the same set of colors, which is like the main colors of a photo. Let's take the red, for example. If I go to the right, it's going to take my reds and turn them into an orange. I mean, it's pretty subtle. You don't see it very much. But if I go to the other side, it's going to make the red, I think, more redder, which is kind of nice for that photo. Orange. If I go to the right, it's going to take my orange and make them yellow, almost greenish yellow. If I go to the left, it's going to make them even more orange. I don't like that, so I can double click and put it back to where it was. Yellows. If I go to the right, it's going to make my yellows a bit greenish. If I go to the left, it's going to make my yellows a bit more orange. So you just have to try, sort of give it a try. So that's hue. Saturation. I think that the blue in the sky is too much saturated. The way it works is that, for example, I take the blues. If I go to the right, it's going to make the blue even more vivid. If I go to the left, it's going to take the blues, some colors out of the blue. I think it's too much. So I'm just going to put it back, put back some colors. But I didn't want such a strong blue. Maybe something like that. Okay. And luminance. Luminance is saturation is how much a vivid is. If I take the red and I move the reds to the right, it's going to make all the reds more vivid. If I take the orange a bit to the right, it's going to make the orange more vivid, which could be nice on this photo. Could kind of work, Luminance is different. If I take, for example, because there's a lot of green here, if I take the green and move the luminance to the right, the greens are going to be brighter, which could work actually on this photo. And if I go to the left, it's going to make the greens darker. It doesn't change how vivid a color is. All it does, it changes the luminosity, like how bright or how dark a color is. I actually find that I have way too much red here, so let's back down the saturation. I think it's too much. When I look at it, it's a bit too much, maybe a little bit of orange saturation, but that's it. So this hue changes the colors. This saturates the colors or takes saturation off, and this brightens or darkens the colors. What I advise you to do is take your photo and change the slider. So don't change it too much. Don't go like what I did on the hue is kind of fine. You can change a bit, but on saturation and luminance, you have to be careful because sometimes you can have artifact appearing if you go too much on this slider. It's good to move them just a little bit. Okay, if you want to see the before and after, the HSL panel, you can click here, before and after. I have made some subtle change in the photos on the colors, not big change, but some subtle changes. Okay, so that's one last point is you can either change on the sliders or you can click on this little icon here, and you get the you get a little tool which you can just click, for example, on the blue, and if you move up the blue, as I took saturation, it's going to saturate the blue, or if you go down, it's going to desaturate the blue. Same thing, if I click here, I'm on the green, so if I move up, it's going to make the green more saturated. If I move down, it's going to make the green less saturated. So let's add a bit of saturation maybe on the greens. So that's kind of nice. Okay, So you can either use the sliders or use these tools here. Split toning, I'm not going to go into. Details. Now that's an important one. Details and noise reduction. Now this photo you cannot tell if there is noise or not. And the way to tell it is you just click on the space bar and you click on the photo. You zoom at 100%. And you can see there's a bit of grain on the photo because it's like an underexposed photo. So basically this is a noise reduction. So you can just move it to the right and it's going to take out this sort of grainish. I don't know if you can tell on the video, but if I take out, it took out all the graininess basically there. Now I want to show you something. If I am, sorry, I have the hand. In this part of the photo is very, very, very dark. So I know when the photo is very dark, there is noise. You see, you can tell here there is noise. Even so, I took the overall noise. And there is a new option in Lightroom 4, which I'll show you in a minute, where you can locally take out the noise with the brush tool. But for now, I just did a bit of noise reduction for the overall photo. And I usually always sharpen my photo out of Lightroom around 50, 60 or 70. Let's do 60. You cannot see much if you look on the 100 basis, but look at sharpening. If I go the whole way here, the whole photo is a bit blurry. If I go to 60 or 70, the whole photo goes much more in focus. So I always go around 60 or 70. Okay, and so that's noise reduction. I'll show you again how you can use it locally. Lens correction, now that's a very important one. Lens correction, basically you've got two aspects. Let's just look at the let's say the automatic version, the auto version of it. All you have to do is click on enable profile correction. And what Lightroom is going to do is detect the type of lens you've been using, which in my case is 17 to 40, and it's going to try to, it knows that there is some issues with that lens and it's going to try to correct it. Usually what it does is on these photos is it takes out all the vignetting. Now unfortunately on this photo I kind of like the vignetting, but I will be able to put it back. Remove chromatic aberration. Now what is chromatic aberration? Chromatic aberration, you don't have so much in this photo, but you can see here a little bit. It's basically when you have your diaphragm very close, like very narrow, like around 13, 16, 22. Sometimes you can have little lines around the border, like red lines or green lines. When you click remove chromatic aberration, which what I do all the time, look at this. Let me put it back. Look how red this is here. And if I put it, it's going to take, it doesn't take it completely, but it takes a bit out. But this is not really chromatic aberration. This is just the sun, reflecting on the sides of the trees here because I'm completely backlighted. Okay, so now we have enabled the chromatic aberration, but I think that the vignetting effect that was originally with the lens was good. And actually, it's on the next window that we can deal with it. It's called the post-crop vignetting. Vignetting, basically what it is when you move the slider to the left, it's going to add a vignette, which is basically darken the corners of the photo. Why is it good to darken the corners of photos? Usually it's good for two reasons on landscapes, because it makes the sky pop up even more. That's one reason. And the other reason is that it makes the middle of the photo brighter, and it drags the attention of the viewer into the middle. It jumps your viewer in the middle of the photo on a complete unconscious basis. Anyway, so that's post-crop vignetting. I always do a little bit on landscapes of post-crop vignetting. Here you can add some grains, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, so we've basically gone through the whole settings of Lightroom. The only thing that I want to show you is camera calibration. Now what that is basically different ways to interpret the raw files. So you can just go around the settings, like this is, it's going to not change much on your photo. But for example, if I go to camera landscape, which is normally what you should use, look what happens. Look how the photo got just more red and blues and more vivid. And so you just check all the settings, see what you like the most. Faithful, neutral makes it very like neutral, portrait, standard, I think I'm going to go either for landscape or I'm going to go for standard. Let's go for landscape. Let's add a bit more color in this life. Okay, so now I know that I have a bit of noise here. How can I take it out? Well, simple. I just take a brush, I click on Alt to reset everything. And here, this is a new option in Lightroom 4, noise. I put the noise on the right and I just paint over the part that I know that has noise. I make my brush smaller as the area gets smaller. Okay, I know that there is noise in anything which is black, and there's a lot of blackness there. Okay, that's just in case I wanted to make a big print of it, you know, so I don't have like some sort of grainy stuff in it. Now that's a complete new option, being able to take out noise on a local basis. Okay, let me back down the overall vibrance. I think it's just too vibrant. The photo is too vivid. Okay, that's pretty nice. Let's maybe, okay, now here, you can see there is some dust. This is like a sensor type of dust. So, and there is a tool we have not gone over yet, which is this one, which all it does, it takes out the sensor dust or any type of dust. So the way it works is that you have a circle, which as usual you can make by the slider bigger or smaller, or use the mouse wheel, and you just click on the spot itself, and it's going to create a circle, and it's going to try to copy what is there in that circle and sort of blend it. But here it's copying a bit of clouds. I don't want that. Let's put that circle there, so it's going to copy blue into blue. And yeah, my spot is gone. Let's make it a bit smaller. And okay. And if you want to see how your spots are taken out, you can just move your mouse out of the window and you can see the result. Look, as I move my mouse, and if when you move your mouse out of the window you can still see the circles, that's because your tool overlay option is set on always. The best is to put it on auto. This way when you go out of your window, they are gone. Okay, usually you have dust in the corners on photos, so let's move to the other corner, see if there is any dust. Yes, there is. Look at this. It's a little thing, not much, but anyway, tack. Okay. So now I'm finished. I took out some dust. Let's press the space bar key to go back to the full view. And basically that's that. Now I think that the whole photo is a bit crooked. I want to rotate it a little bit. So for that, you can click on the rotation tool, which we have not gone over yet. And let's say that this part should be fully straight. You can just click on this angle function, and you click on the horizon line and follow the horizon line. And check this out, and it makes the horizon line completely straight, and then you can just press enter, and the whole photo is cropped. Okay, so let's look again, the before and after. That's the before, and that's the after. Big change, very big change. So okay, basically that is that. Okay. So before we finish off, I think that my brush stroke of the red of the sun is a bit too much. You know, it's kind of it looks a bit fake. So what you can do is you can just click on the brush, and you will see when you move your mouse over the photo, there is a little pin on where the old brush was, which is where on this photo? Where is the pin? The option show edit pin, which was on never. Make sure it's on auto. And you see here, basically you have this pin. When I go over on this pin and I click show selected mask overlay, well, there is nothing on this one, but if I go on this one and I click on it, I can see where I painted this sort of yellow cast. So, and I can uncheck that, and basically what I can do is I can click on the Alt key to erase, and erase some of this brush stroke to make sure that it's just around the sun. so it's a bit more natural. Okay, so that's, you know, it's just here. And this pin, if I go over it and I select it, I can see that I brushed, this is where I took the noise out. So it's completely non-destructive. You can go back and forth, and if you want to erase a pin, you can just select it. For example, let me click on this one, because which is this new brush that I have now, and I can just click on delete and I'm erasing it. Okay, so I only have 2 brush strokes here, one for the sun and one for the noise. Okay, so let me go back. So that's basically all I'm going to do on this photo. In the next videos, we'll continue to explore the retouching part of Lightroom, because really this is the main, where the main job is.